It's certainly an honor to introduce Richard, who's in the short time I've been at Rice, has become a great colleague and a good friend. I won't read his entire bio because it might take 30 minutes, but I'll just hit some of the highlights. So Professor Tapia is a mathematician and professor in the Department of Computational and Applied Math at Rice University. He is internationally known for his research in the computational mathematical sciences and is a national leader in education and outreach. Tapia's current position at Rice is university professor. He's only the 6th individual afforded this title in the over 110-year history of Rice University. Tapia was born in LA to parents who separately immigrated to Mexico as young teenagers. He went on to receive his BA, MA, and PhD from UCLA. In 1967, he joined the math department at UCLA and spent 2 years in the faculty at University of Wisconsin. He then joined the Rice faculty in 1970. Among his many honors, Tapia was the first Hispanic elected to the National Academy of Engineering. In 1996, President Clinton appointed him to the National Science Board, where he served until 2002. He has received the National Science Foundation Inaugural Presidential Award for Excellence in Science, Mathematics, and Engineering Mentoring, the Lifetime Mentor Award from the American Association for the Advancement of Science, the Distinguished Service Award to the Profession Award from the Society of Industrial and Applied Mathematics, the Distinguished Public Service Award from the American Mathematical Society, the Distinguished Scientist Award from the Society of Advancement of Chicanos and Native Americans in Science, in addition to 7 honorary doctorates. He is the first recipient of the Computing Research Association's A. Nichao Haberman Award for outstanding contribution to aiding members of underrepresented groups within the computing research community, and named one of 20 most influential leaders in minority math by the National Research Council, and listed as one of 100 most influential Hispanics in the US by the Hispanic Business Magazine. Tapia was recently honored with the 2017 AAAS Public Engagement with Science Award for his remarkable career blending world-class scholarship, admirable mentoring, and profound contributions to science, technology, engineering, and mathematics education, as well as public engagement. In 2014, Tapia was awarded the National Science Board's Vannevar Bush Award for extraordinary leadership, inspiration, and advocacy to increase opportunities for underrepresented minorities in science. In 2011, President Barack Obama presented the National Medal of Science to Tapia, which is the highest award given to a scientist or engineer by the US government. While at Rice, Professor Tapia has directed or co-directed more underrepresented minority and women doctoral recipients in science and engineering than anyone in the country, and has led several programs that have brought recognition to the university's commitment to diversity. Tapia recently established the Rice Summer Tapia Camps for high school students and teachers that offers campers the opportunity to work alongside STEM students, interact with renowned scientists, and participate in project-based collaborative learning activities. I've had the opportunity to see many students come back to Rice that have been significantly impacted by Richard, and I've been to his summer camps, and I see how he's completely changing these kids' lives. So it's really an honor to be a colleague, and please join me in welcoming Richard to the stage.
Thank you, Reggie. Okay, I think it's an honor to be introduced by your dean, okay? That's what I think. I think, okay? At least Reggie knows what I've done, okay? And he's been a very strong supporter. So as I talk, let's see. Let me just tell you up front, there's 3 themes that I'm going to touch on, 3 themes. One is diversity and representation are not the same. As you can see, diversity is a bunch of different types of people. Representation is the underrepresented groups from this country, okay? Domestic and foreign minorities are not the same. 3, our hiring practices for faculty in STEM are flawed. Those are 3 of the themes that should be running through what I say. So the first slide says, room at the top. The lack of domestic, it should say STEM minority faculty at our research institutions. Now, this talk, Sunday we had a big storm in Houston. We even had a big tornado and stuff, and our power was gone. So half of this talk I wrote with a flashlight in the dark, okay? But I hope it doesn't show, okay? So anyway, for good reason, the nation uses representation in the areas of mathematics, computer science, and electrical engineering as indicators of the health of our STEM representation. Good indicators, because that's been the backbone of our country. That's what we have succeeded on. So let's see, how are we continuing on those successes? So I haven't been pushing this thing, so we got to go back. We got to go back. Okay. So look, let's go back to that, okay? And we'll put this down. Where is it going to stay? Okay. Over here. All right. So now we go back. And so what I said is, okay, the first thing was room at the top. You saw that. Then the next thing is, for good reason, the nation uses representation in mathematics, computer science, electrical engineering. That's been the history. That's been our backbone. That's what made us healthy. So let's go to the next slide. Okay, now if you can look at it. What it says is blacks and Hispanics as faculty in United States universities. This is Donna Nelson data. Donna Nelson from University of Oklahoma. Top 100 departments in the country. So I won't spend a lot of time, but I'll look at the yellow in there. So let's take math, my area. Now, I'm in engineering, okay? I mean, we chose to be in engineering. We love being in engineering, okay? Less than 2% blacks in the top 100% as faculty. Less than 2% brown. 17% Asian. Now let's go to computer science. Less than 1% black, 2% Hispanic, 27% Asian. Go to electrical engineering. Less than 2% black, less than 2% Hispanics, 28% Asian. So I'm not criticizing, I'm saying success. Success. You have to take that. So this is combined domestic and foreign. So I say, yes, we are here, but we're not there. Our population is expanding. Mexican-American boom. You see this. We are very healthy. We're producing more Mexican-American domestic-born that are coming from across the border. So the wall will keep us in, not out, okay? So we are here, but we certainly are not there on the faculties, okay? So here's what we're going to do. In what disciplines do we receive our doctorates? Let's see where we as underrepresented minorities receive our doctorate degrees. This seems like a reasonable question. Okay. Hispanics. Civil engineering and sociology. Now, civil engineering is a cultural thing with domestic Mexican Americans. It's been a big thing. And so it's not a surprise, civil engineering and sociology. Now, African Americans, sociology and political science. Females, sociology and psychology. White males, everything but sociology. Asians, electrical engineering, mechanical engineering, computer science. Look at those three big spikes, okay? No surprise. So I ask you, rhetorically, why worry about underrepresentation? Our concern with STEM domestic underrepresentation today does not come from moral or ethical issues as it did in the 60s. I lived the 60s. I remember when we were concerned, we were unfair. Let's make up for it, okay? Indeed, today it is a simple matter of the nation's survival. As such, it's an issue of numbers, not who suffered the most. We all suffered enough. It's the numbers. And the domestic Hispanic are large numbers. Domestic underrepresentation endangers the health of the nation and not the health of the discipline. Math is going to go on. Electrical engineering is going to go on. Computer science is going to go on, with or without women and minorities. The disciplines are healthy. It's the nation that won't be healthy without representation in those areas for leadership. So the discipline, sure, you can argue there's a difference. I'll give you that. But in mathematics, pure mathematics, I mean, it isn't the minority and the women that are going to improve the health of the discipline. It's going to improve the health of the leadership of the nation. Okay. So yes, we are here, but we are not there. Why? As they say in Spanish, ¿por qué? All right. So let's look at, this slide says, lack of domestic minority graduate students at top research universities. Some of the causes. My PhD is from UCLA. So let's talk about UCLA. In mathematics, graduate education. Over the years, UCLA has produced more underrepresented minority domestic than any school in the country. Rodrigo Bañuelos, Richard Tapia, Johnny McLaurin. If you look at the diversity statement, it says, we will reflect the diversity of the city. Los Angeles is quite diverse. Number 1 in the country diversity is Houston. Number 2 is New York. Number 3 is Los Angeles. Okay? The statement reads well. So how many underrepresented minority domestic graduate students in mathematics at UCLA? 0. None. None. That's a shock. At Berkeley, almost 0. At Stanford, 0. All across the country. I know math because I study it. So we're not there. Don't get to the faculty if we don't get to the graduate schools that produce the faculty. Okay? So UCLA, it's too competitive now. As you apply, the minorities don't make it through. I've had one of my dear friends, I won't mention his name, told UCLA, I'm no longer sending you minority students because you have no chance of accepting it. And yet some of these students are the best I've ever produced. I have the same thing. So these top-level universities are not accepting our minority students. So if you don't accept them at schools, that are research schools, then how are they going to get to the faculty? Okay, migration away from STEM due to loss of self-esteem. At the undergraduate level, you take the minorities in, undergraduates, in STEM areas, they can't be competitive because of their poorer preparation. So in order to maintain self-esteem, you see large migrations away from STEM to the friendly side of campus. We saw that, sociology. Does Rice have that as a problem? Absolutely. Migration patterns. Now, Rice graduates minorities at the same rate we graduate majorities, at the same rate we graduate athletes. We do a really good job, highest in the country on graduating athletes. We don't win, but we do graduate them. They do get degrees, but we don't win. Okay? But those migration patterns don't show because they graduate with a degree, but not in the intended discipline. Same for minorities. Not in the engineering or science discipline movement. And that's true at all the universities that we see. Okay, so we underrepresented minorities. Now, one of the things that Gilda or somebody referred to is, if you go to the Richard Tapia Celebration of Diversity Conference, which will be in September in San Diego this time, it used to be that we had plenary talks, and it's targeted at underrepresented minorities. But now the exhibit hall is just a big fiesta, a big party. Google and Amazon and Microsoft, and the students don't go to the plenary talks. They go there, stand in line, and get on-the-spot job offers. So a lot of the really good minority students go to these conferences, and they get job offers, and they're doing really well. So we're losing a lot of really good ones into graduate education. They don't go, okay? Now, we underrepresented minorities have poor preparation at all levels. Mathematics faculty do not differentiate between poor preparation and poor talent. Okay, back. So, let's see, where is this thing? Okay, here. So look, mathematics faculty do not differentiate between poor preparation and poor talent. Hence, in early level courses, they interpret poor performance as poor talent and discourage the underrepresented minorities from going into a STEM major. That happens all the time in good schools. It happens at Rice. It happens. Now, poor K-12 math preparation for domestic minorities. The curse of the big cities. Now, Houston. Houston Independent School District is 8% white. The city's 25% white. Ratio of 1 to 3. Chicago, New York, Los Angeles, the same. Minority students are educated in big city education. White students are not. And big city education at the K-12 level is problematic. The whites aren't being educated there. Just the blacks and the browns and others, okay? Big problem. Now, we're going to get to here. Faculty hiring criteria. This is important for deans. This is really important. I've been on so many faculty hiring committees, and I'm always, beat up. Do I ever win? Not really, okay? Number one criteria. Number of papers published in respected journals. Recently, our chair said we were hiring, all I care about is number of papers in respected journals. 2, the pedigree of the school attended is a large factor. Schools strive to hire from a university that has a better pedigree than the one, and certainly not lower. Letters of recommendation. Weaknesses of certain candidates from very good places or famous advisors are often justified, while any weakness of others, especially underrepresented minorities, are accentuated and used to disqualify the candidates. Okay? Minorities don't make it to our final rounds, not in my department, ever. Okay? So all other attributes, role model effectiveness, mastery of the English language, presentation skill, mentoring skill, service to the department, service to the university, perceived teaching effectiveness, they're either ignored or satisfied at a very low threshold level, often not very high. The flaws, the first 3 criterions, papers, pedigree, letters of recommendation, serve to work against domestic minorities. Criterion 4 works in favor, probably, but it's not used. Criterions 1, 2, 3 work very strongly in favor of foreign minorities. Okay, faculty hiring criteria, okay? Now, a major flaw, mistaking and hiring foreign minorities for underrepresented minorities. That's a major flaw across these universities, across the country. That's one of my number 1 issues. Here's a fundamental axiom of representation. It's my fundamental axiom. We domestic underrepresented minorities need role models of our same fabric. Foreign minorities do not serve as a need, but understanding my extra baggage. I have extra baggage. Our domestic extra baggage. So, what's my extra baggage? Here's an example, a part of it. In the United States, I'm called Mexican. In Mexico, I'm called gringo. Where do I belong? I'm too Mexican to be American, and I'm too American to be Mexican. What am I? My identity was Chicano. In Los Angeles, negative image with the term Mexican American. Your kind is not quality. You do not belong in quality activity. That's the story of my life. Coping with failure. Maybe they were right. Maybe I don't belong. My mother, be proud, honey, be proud. But Mom, they won't let me be proud. They're going to put me down because my heritage is Mexican, born here. Not if I come from Mexico or Puerto Rico. There it's homogeneous. It's in Los Angeles and Houston. Okay, domestic versus foreign Latino characteristics. Intimidation. Your Spanish is not good enough. You do not know the history, literature, or culture of Latin America. Indeed, The Spanish language, that which binds also separates. That which binds also separates. My defense. Let's talk about Jose Alfredo Jimenez, the great Mexican composer, and Hank Williams, the great American composer. What do you think of them? How do you contrast them? What about Lola Beltran, Lola La Grande, and Patsy Cline? Oh, you don't know about them. You don't know about the country that you live in and its history. Okay, how about drag racing and rock and roll? Oh, you don't know that either. But you're supposed to mentor people who grew up in this country. So you say, I don't know the history of Latin America, which indeed I don't, but I know more about it than you know about fundamental history, grassroots history of our own country. That's my defense. So I tend to be a pain. My wife tells me so all the time. But that's who I am. Was I born a pain? I don't know. So here we go. Look, this says some random comments on foreign versus domestic Latinos. So these I just wrote down. These are things that I've lived and I wrote down. And I want to share them with you. In the late 1960s, in 1969, you see the domestic Latino students, the Chicanos, we had hunger strikes because of really bad treatment by Latin American faculty towards the domestic. Hunger strikes in 69 at both Berkeley and UCLA that led to the Chicano service centers because we were treated so badly by foreign faculty, okay? I took Spanish literature classes. The professor would always go after me to show how my Spanish wasn't up to par. He hated me, I hated him, we had great fights. It was good, okay? Finally, he gave me a B, and I was clearly the best student. And I said to him, I'll take your B as long as you give no A's. I can't do that. He had a pet who was going to get the A. She was wonderful. Her name was Sherry Larks. Okay, give Sherry Larks a B and I'll take my B. I'm not going to do that. Then give me an A. He did, but he didn't like me, okay? Why should someone from Latin America be given any preference? They often do outreach to their own home country and not to those in our own backyard of San Antonio, of Austin, of Houston, of Los Angeles, okay? We need to improve the health of the United States, not the health of the foreign countries. That should follow, but not lead. Blackwell Tapia, November last year. Black and brown speakers. 6 brown speakers. Wonderful. Some of the best talks I've ever heard. All 6 foreign. My students, including 2 of them who were black, said, that really bothers me. None of the speakers were domestic. All came from foreign countries. They were good, but what does that say about me being raised in this country as a domestic minority? Do I have to be foreign to succeed? That's what I used to ask at UCLA. I have a student from Los Angeles whose Spanish is not real good. His name's Oscar, Mexican American. So he went to a Rice meeting of Latin American students, and they made fun of him, and they teased him, and they said, you are a fake Mexican. You can't speak Spanish. We domestic Latinos, Jean, that's my wife Jean, she's New Yorican, and Rat is me, we're tired of having our Spanish corrected. We're tired of it. My Spanish is pretty good. My wife's caretaker is from Mexico. The other one is from Honduras. She's handicapped, she's in a wheelchair, and I'm pretty good, but not at the level they want. So when I went to Rice many years ago, my wife Jean, who was born in New York, Puerto Rican parents, she worked at Dairy Queen, and she saved up money, and she went to Puerto Rico, the island, with our 2 kids. Jean, what happened when you got home from Puerto Rico? Richard, I am not Puerto Rican. I am not Puerto Rican. I'm American. I am New Yorican, okay? Rat, that's me. I'm not Mexican. My mother and father are Mexican. I'm American. I'm Chicano. I have nothing in common with the great aristocratic Argentine mathematicians Alberto Calderon, Luis Caffarelli, Ricardo Nirenberg. Great mathematicians. I have nothing in common with them. In fact, as I grew up, they served as anti-role models. Not neutral, anti-role models. They made me uncomfortable. They were the hardest to deal with. Not hired by Berkeley. Now, Berkeley has those foreign minorities on their faculty in the math department. In the history of the University of California, Berkeley math department, tenure track, they've never had an underrepresented minority domestic, ever. You may say David Blackwell. No, he was in statistics. So I gave a talk at Berkeley not long ago. It was 2005, I guess that's long ago. And the title of my talk was, Why You, Berkeley Math, Would Not Hire Me. In spite of the fact that I'd give more to your university than 99% of your faculty. But you wouldn't hire me because I would never win a Fields Medal. But I gave it other directions. Jerry Lieberman, a great dean at Stanford in 1976, wanted me at Stanford. But the department wasn't sure that they wanted to hire me. I'm not sure he's good enough researcher. So there was a fight between the dean and the department. I visited. 1976, I spent the year at Stanford. I did very well. I was faculty advisor to every minority group. I had 3 classes and I had 3 perfect scores in teaching. The dean wanted me. The department didn't. So in 1976, I was full professor at Rice and had tenure for 4 years. So Stanford offered me associate professor without tenure. So I told Stanford to go to hell, okay? And I'm very proud of it. They made a mistake, but I didn't, okay? They made a mistake. Pretty soon I'm National Academy, National Medal of Science. Stanford would have loved that. But they didn't hire me, okay? Some random comments. Okay, more random comments on foreign. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, AOC. Sonia Sotomayor, Jean Tapia, my wife. They're not Puerto Ricans. They're New Yorkers. They're Americans. And they show it. If you look at each one of them, you see that that product of the United States shows, okay? You can tell if you know these people. They're not from Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico is homogeneous. They've never felt, no one in Puerto Rico has been told, you can't be a scientist because you're Puerto Rican. But you do hear that in New York. So I asked today, when I watched my department, would I be hired today by a research university? I don't know. My PhD is 68. I had a lot of offers, huge offers from tier ones. Would it be that way today? I don't know. I have 3 excellent Mexican-American students that I produced at Rice, but I couldn't get them hired by tier 1 universities or even good research universities. They were Cristina Villalobos, Jose Cifuentes, Joseph, and Eddie Castillo. Okay? I produced a lot of minority students. And they have jobs. A lot of them are at University of Texas, El Paso, and they've done really well. Diana Natalicio tells me, Richard, your students are changing our culture. Send us more. University of Texas, Rio Grande Valley. But I wanted some of them at UCLA. What are the faculty, underrepresented minority, at Berkeley, UCLA, Stanford, Harvard? 0, maybe 1. If you take all the tier 1 schools in the state of Texas, math departments, tenure track, 1 African American, he's in our department, and he was my student. None, 0. Domestic Hispanics, each school has 1, except the University of Houston. They have 0, okay? Rice has 1, okay? Okay, is there a continuum between foreign and domestic Latinos? Absolutely. Go to UT El Paso, UT Rio Grande Valley, and take Miguel Argayas, or let's say Arturo Fuentes, Karen Lozano. They're all from foreign countries, but they really, really are doing a great job. So of course there's a continuum. Okay, I resigned very proudly from an advisory board to the president at MIT. See, some of the best things I've done in my life have been letters of resignation. They're beautiful, okay? And I want to publish them because I say so much in these letters, okay? So I sent it to President Rife, and I said, I'm resigning. And he said, no. But see, he's from Venezuela. He's not domestic. He came for a PhD at MIT and stayed on to be president, okay? That's not bad, okay? So I resigned, and in my book, I'm going to put that letter. It's a beautiful letter, okay? Now, Rice Engineering, we are #1 in underrepresented minority faculty. We didn't pick ourselves. Someone picked us. And I'm proud of that, but there's a caveat. 8 out of 15 on the engineering faculty at Rice are domestic. 8. Okay? Now, in Rice Natural Sciences, 1 out of 8 is domestic. It is illegal to ask a faculty member where he or she was born. So the underrepresented minority faculty category self-identifies. The precious few. Okay, I'm writing a book. I give a lot of thought. It's time to write a book. The book is called The Precious Few. That means underrepresented domestic minorities. And it's got 17 chapters. It's got a lot of stuff, okay? So, chapter 2 tells you who are the precious few. Chapter 11 is entitled, do we deans really want to hire the precious few as university faculty? Now, Rice does extremely well at the undergraduate level. We're 27% underrepresented minority in engineering at the undergraduate level. 27% Asian. That's really good. But what's the difference between good and undergraduate and graduate? Well, undergraduate is controlled, the admissions, by the university. Graduate's controlled by the departments. And there comes faculty culture. So I know that faculty culture. I live it on a daily basis. That's the difference. So that's why Rice should be very proud of its undergraduate representation minority. Not so in graduate school. Chapter 12 is mistaking foreign minorities for the precious few. Now, these chapters are professional. I don't just insult people. I mean, I give my views. So when Teresa Maldonado asked me, would I like to talk here? I said yes. And I'm going to distribute those chapters to you before I speak. But Teresa said, no, don't do that. You're going to scare them. You're going to scare them, okay? First talk. And then give them access. So, chapter 2, who are the precious few? Chapter 11, do we really want to hire the precious few? And I say, no, we really don't. That's what the chapter is about. And chapter 12, mistaking foreign minorities for the precious few. So all you need to do, if you want to read those chapters, is send me an email at rtapia@rice.edu, and I will send them to you. They're long, and if you read them, you will learn a lot. And I think you'll see a lot of things that I've been studying for many years. You may not like them. You may disagree. But as rational individuals, you owe it to yourself to at least listen to the other side or to your same side. And I say a lot of things in there. I've had incredibly good responses from the people that I've been sending them to, okay? And that's it. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Dr. Tapia. Do we have questions? We can pass the microphones around.
You should have questions. I mean, I can handle questions. I'm almost
We have plenty of time for questions.
almost an adult. Okay? And I fight with my wife all the time. Yesterday, I mean, she's bedridden, and she goes, so yesterday when I left, she said, see, my wife has early signs of dementia, so she's very aggressive with her caretaker, who comes from Mexico. and speaks Spanish. So Jean said, I said, Jean, you're giving her a bad time. Leave her alone. Don't be so bad. And she says, Richard, I don't like you. I love you, but I don't like you. Okay? Jean's always telling me that. I mean, she's New Yorican. And I said, but look, you're wearing a shirt that has my picture on it. The Tapia summer camps, a picture of Richard Tapia. And she says, yes, I know. I don't like you, but I do like the shirt. Okay?
Richard, thank you for that excellent, stimulating talk, as you always do. My question is, can you speak a little bit to some of the things that we have to deal with, like the myth of meritocracy and the stereotypes and the narratives, the false narratives that are out there, and how to counter them?
Yeah, and see, Gil, I mean, that's excellent. I deal with this on a daily basis, okay? In other words, in my department, quality is defined as number of papers in good journals, okay? I have a student that I mentioned, and I know he got to a final round at a school, but he lost to another person, not a minority, and not even a foreign minority, because the other person had one more paper. Number of papers is not bad to look at, but don't start doing stupid things like arguing 5 versus 6. Or don't argue on GREs 95th percentile versus 93rd. Our departments do that, okay? So you have to look at it holistically. Gilda, we've had success at the undergraduate levels because faculty no longer do undergraduate admissions. They look at the holistic picture, and we do very well. But where are we going to learn faculty or teach faculty to do that? That's where deans have to come in and say, deans can't micromanage me. I'm not asking, but you can ask, why did you do this, or how did you do this? Are there any underrepresented minorities in there? Are there, women in there? So a dean can look and say to a chair, tell me about the search. Tell me about the people that you looked at, okay? Now, I have found that most university people are rational, and they'll listen. And if I talk enough, a good number of them will understand what I'm saying, okay? Look, the people that I love, I have some people that I really love who were foreign minority students, and I do love them. But they don't know what I had to go through. They don't know what you had to go through, okay? All my life, I've been asked, am I good enough? Am I good enough? That's what I had to ask myself. On the National Science Board, am I good enough? Okay, National Medal of Science, story. My wife, who was a dancer and did theater, she doesn't know anything about science or engineering, but she knows all the people. So she said, Richard, could you ever win the National Medal of Science? No, Gene, no, I'm not good enough. Well, I think you are. But you don't know. So anyway, we went to the White House, I won. And first thing, a woman came out and said, President Obama does not like you to yell. Okay, so Gene's in a wheelchair right there, okay? So the Marine captain comes out and says, National Medal of Science. No, first of all, as the president come out, and you see, ladies and gentlemen, the President of the United States, and they play Hail to the Chief. It's a great moment, okay? So Gene's sitting right there. The Marine captain says, ladies and gentlemen, the National Medal of Science, Richard Tapia. Gene went crazy. She just jumped, and she screamed, and she hollered. President Obama looked at me and nodded, as is to say, that's your wife. And I nodded back and said, yes, that is my wife, okay? And then I nodded to say, she's New Yorican. All New Yoricans yell, okay? So on that night we got home, Gene said, you knew I was going to yell. And I said, Gene, I knew you were going to yell. She said, my side won. What am I supposed to do? Just sit there, okay? My side won, okay? So I'm telling you that it's hard sometimes for all my faculty to digest that I won all these awards. Did I win it because I'm a minority? Did I win the National Medal of Science because I'm a minority? Did I win National Academy? Congratulations to you, your National Academy. Did you do it because you're black and I did it because I'm brown? Okay? Those are the fights that I have every day. But I can look and I can say, look, not only have I won those awards, I also win the teaching awards and I also win everything else. So I don't have to say it, I just imply it, okay? And so by example, we show them that quality comes. So when I was on National Science Board, what I wanted to leave the National Science Board was Richard Tapia is an important member of the National Science Board. People like him are important members. So excellence comes in all flavors. Excellence comes in all flavors. People like Richard can contribute to this thing. And that's what I got. So that's my message. I'm not the world's greatest mathematician, but I'm good enough to show people that excellence comes in all flavors. Just give people like me a break. The 3 students that I mentioned here, they would all be huge successes, okay? But they don't have enough papers.
Okay, we have another question over here.
Good.
Aaron Baba from WashU in St. Louis. So we've made some marginal progress in African American hiring at the faculty level, in recruiting PhD students, and at undergraduate we're actually about 16%, which I think is about the national actual representational average.
No, that's good. That's better.
With Hispanics, we're nowhere. And I just wonder whether you have any comment about whether approaches that folks have taken in various diversity efforts, et cetera, maybe need to be rethought a little bit in terms of different cultural challenges across the different ethnicity and challenges.
I'm not going to make a distinction between black and white. I maintain this. In fact, I built a community at Rice. And so when people come to interview, like last week we had a really good Mexican-American student. He sees our community. I'm not alone. There's people just like me. And maybe I don't like Houston, and maybe I don't like Texas, but I like the atmosphere that is in this department. And when we have students come, I let the students, the minority students, recruit the minority students. I don't go to dinner with them. I say, here's a credit card, take them to dinner. Let's do this, let's talk. And we do a very good job of bringing them in. So I'm saying, you have to make them feel that they won't be all alone. That means you have to have some success with others and let them recruit for you, okay? Now, it's unfortunate that a lot of Texas and California have such dominant Hispanic populations. So Rodrigo Bañuelos, who's the chair of the math department at Purdue, he says it is so hard to recruit Mexican-American graduate students from Texas and California because they come to West Lafayette and they say it's so different than South Texas. But if there's a group, if I had to say one word that has allowed me to succeed at Rice, okay? People don't like Houston. I mean, they do once they get there, but they don't like it either. It's community. It's community. My minority students don't even know what major the other ones are. I have a program called RGEM, Rice Graduate Education for Minority. And they're a community. They're together. They support me and I support them. So you don't want to go someplace and say, I'm the only one and I won't fit. So you have to have some success. That means maybe you have to recruit 2 or 3 at a time. But when I was chair of our department at Rice, we were 60% women and 35% underrepresented minority. We're not that anymore because I'm no longer chair. But we really did some good things. And they weren't off. Juan Mesa, who's director of mathematical sciences at the National Science Foundation, he was one of our minority students. And I could go on and on and on. They were good. So you have to say, like when Gina and I went to Wisconsin, my first job was at Wisconsin. We knew we were going to be alone, but we adapted quite well. Gina's from New York. So I say, you can't recruit 1 if you already have 0. So how do you solve that problem? Teresa, you want to say anything?
Here you go.
Thank you. I'm sorry. He just triggered. Okay, now that you're no longer department chair,
Yeah.
the dynamic changed.
Absolutely.
So at every university, when a key person is no longer in a leadership position, whatever it is, to move things forward. When that person steps away from that role, the sustainability is not there. And I think that's why a lot of the NSF programs don't work and other programs don't work, if you can comment on that.
Yeah, no, that's right. See, with this, Reggie mentioned the summer camps. I didn't want to work with high school students. I just wanted to work with graduate students because nobody was working with them. But I learned that last year and the year before, the high school students, which are predominantly Hispanic from Texas, okay, they looked at me and they said, what an incredible role model. So without having to talk to them or hold their hands, they said, you are an incredible role model for us. And at the end of the camp, when we would have a rose and a thorn, how many of them said that the rose for the whole camp was meeting Richard Tapia and the things he's done, because now I know I can do it, okay? So you have to have that belief. So that means you have to have that machinery in place. And so people, it's really easy to size up a place as you visit it, whether it's friendly or not. That's easy to do, okay? And so our students do a good job of selling rice, and our faculty do too. So now, you can't, see, when I was in the National Science Board, we'd have conferences. Let's talk about education for underrepresented minorities, okay? And they'd say, oh, yeah, that's good. We'll let A, B, and C. And I'd say, what about we represent ourselves? Can't we represent ourselves? Can't we talk about ourselves? We know ourselves well. I know who we are. I've been there. And they'd say, no, this person has done a lot of research on it, okay? Like Yuri Treisman, okay, at UT. And I said, but we know ourselves. That's why I'm sharing these things with you. So the credibility that I speak and I'm a university professor is an incredible impact as a role model from high school all the way up. So you need somebody of the same fabric. And I speak to them. Now, I'll grant you that it's a harder challenge with the African Americans because I'm Hispanic. So I take it a little bit easier. But once I win them over, they know I care about them, and I have as strong support from the African Americans as I do from the Hispanics. So these programs at NSF, no, I don't think they're doing much. You can't go to somebody and say, change your culture. You need a champion. You need Teresa, you need somebody. You need a champion to say, we're going to do it. I'm a champion, and I'm in everybody's face. But they can't discredit me. They can't discredit me. How are they going to discredit me? I mean, I win teaching awards, I win national awards, I win everything. So they don't agree with me, and you won't either if you read my chapters. But I've been there, and I know it. So you have to have leaders. Juan Mesa, okay? Minerva Cordero, okay? You need the leaders in those leadership positions, and that's what Shirley Malcolm, okay? So you need that leadership, and you say, I no longer want to be told by other people about me. Don't tell me who I am and what I can do. I know who I am, I know where I've been, and I know where I want to go.
All right.
Okay.
I think we have another question here.
Thank you for your remarks. You had on your slide the inability of faculty to distinguish between lack of talent and lack of preparation.
Absolutely.
And on that same slide, I believe you had the curse of the big city.
Yes.
Juxtapose that with what we heard this morning about we know what the problem is. Are we willing to do something about it? And I don't know that you'll have an answer, but I imagine you'll have some thoughts on the role of the university of knowing that problem of that big city education, what can be done.
We are doing some great things. These Tapia summer camps, led by Paul Hand, who is a white male from undergraduate Caltech, PhD NYU, postdoc Harvard and MIT. He's leading it. So we are really working with K-12, okay? And we're working in that big city. And we're really having incredible success. So there has to be an awareness that we can work with them. And it's, project-directed learning, and we're doing a great job. But we can't just say, okay, here I am, ready to help. We have to say, how can we help? But big city America, big point. Whites are not educated in big city America. Black and browns are. Take Houston. I showed you the data, okay? So the whites go to private schools or they go to the suburban schools, okay? So we do have to deal with that. And so one of the things, tomorrow, I'm leaving here soon because I have to, tomorrow I'm going to talk to the Houston City Council on exactly that topic, education. So one of the things I'm going to tell them, we're really good in Texas in football, in nurturing football players, okay? And basketball players too, except, Texas Tech's lost, okay, I know that. Identify somebody who's really good in science and math at an early age and coach them and nurture them and make sure they reach full potential. Don't just say, let's go with the flow. Pick them out. Make sure that they educate. And that's what we do with our summer camps. We have some incredible. Treat them as if they are precious, the precious few, and put them forward. Not just football players. I mean, Texas is going to win in terms of NFL quarterbacks. I mean, we have a whole bunch, okay? What about NFL scholars, national academies? That's what we do. Yes, work with them, and, and you're at Harvard, right? Oh, Penn, okay. Yeah, I mean, there are people, and our programs are really doing a good job. And that's only been recent, because I saw what impact we can make, what impact. The role model. When I was at UCLA, there were 350 graduate students in my math graduate cohort. There were no blacks, and there was one Mexican American, me. Where are my role models? I kept looking. What does this mean? What does this mean? So sometimes just being a role model and saying, here I am, and you can do it too, okay? But you have to be of the same fabric. I don't want to hear people from other countries anymore. So you grew up in the barrios of Los Angeles, or the barrios. My wife, New Yorican. My wife is New Yorican. She is not Puerto Rican. And she'll tell you that immediately. That's it.
Well, we've got a cool ideas session at 4. Why don't we do one more question, and then we'll finish up, Annette?
See, I hit you all hard because I believe you're important, and I believe you can deal. But understand my message, and read my chapters, and at least think about it. The responses I've been getting from people on the preliminary versions of those chapters, especially from students. Last night I got one from a black student in my class on one of my chapters, and he just raved about it. Yes?
Yeah, so thank you for this presentation. It was really great to hear your perspective of this. So I worked mostly on issues relating to women in engineering, so I can't say that I'm at all an expert on the particular issues you addressed, even though some of them overlap, like having a role model and all of that. Now, I wonder what your thoughts are about the upper leadership at the university, like the president and the provost, board of trustee. In your experience, have you had buy-in from them on these ideas, or do you think it has to come from faculty and maybe the deans? So yeah, can you?
You ask a really good question. Okay. My first PhD student was a woman. My last was a woman. I've had 20 women PhD students in mathematics. Nobody in the country can match that, okay? Now with minorities, I don't want to direct them all. I want them to go to other faculty, okay? Now, presidents. Presidents have been very supportive, okay? Now, I say this. See, I'm old enough to have grown up in the 60s. And in my book, I say, in the 60s, in the late 60s, we had the sit-ins, okay? The faculty were the good guys, and the administration were the bad guys, okay? That means that we had to sit in on the provost's office. We have to sit in on the president's office. But the faculty were all leading us, okay? It's 180 degrees. Today, the administrators at least say good things. There's no administrator. I mean, you take Reggie, or you take our provost, or you take our president. They say good things, okay? It's the hardcore rank and file faculty that are now the bad guys, okay? So it's gone 180 degrees. I have a dear friend from Romania who came to me recently and said, Richard, why do you want to admit inferior students? If you want better students, just look at more from Romania. I said, there's a national crisis. What is it? They don't understand the national crisis. They don't understand that. So the administrators, in my book I say this, understand. And they all say good things. Question is, do they do good things, and are they going to straighten up the faculty culture? I can't do it. I mean, I'm persona non grata in our department. So I'm much more effective at the national level than at the local level. But I used to be. I have changed undergraduate admissions. And the gender equity thing is a whole different thing. When I went to a company, a big company called Microsoft, to recruit dollars for the Tapia conference, the woman who was in charge of diversity, she said to me, "Richard, we have no champions at the upper level for representation, but we have champions for gender equity. So we're going to give money to the Grace Hopper Conference, and we're not going to give anything to the Richard Tapia Conference." I said, "Come and visit us." And 13 people from Microsoft visited our meeting in Washington, D.C. They immediately bought in. We had to show them what we were doing, and now we're doing. But I often say that gender equity is moving because everybody understands that issue. They don't understand the underrepresentation. They have a daughter, they have a mother, they have a wife, so, or the other way around. But they understand that issue. So in our faculty, the chair of our department is a woman. So you'll hear discussions on gender equity. You'll never hear anything on underrepresentation. So I support that. I believe in it. But in a sense, faculty are letting the gender equity issue sort of dwarf the representation issue. Okay. So a dear friend of mine has just moved to the East Coast, to Northeastern University. And he said that when they have faculty meetings, they'll push about hiring faculty, and they'll say, "Oh, and gender equity." And if they do push to representation, it's going to be black, if they ever do. But they'll never think of brown, never, never. So the thing is, it's moving, and I'm happy the way it's moving. And I think we need to work out the growing pains, okay? And I think that women are very supportive of representation, okay? I'm very, very supportive. And so that's good. But I think our administration says good things, but do they do good things? Different question.
Very quickly, I'll make a couple of comments about the African American topic. I remember when I was at MIT for 8 years, I never had a single African American professor in those 8 years. And I had only one woman professor who was Sheila Widnall. In those 8 years, nobody else. So that's MIT. At RPI, I remember joining RPI in 2000. I was the second African American full professor. When I left 10 years later, I left a single African American professor. I don't count the president. At Syracuse University, when I came in, I was the first African American chair of mechanical and aerospace engineering department, and they had never hired a single woman professor tenure track in their 100-plus year history. They told me, well, we tried, we couldn't find any. Well, within 3 years, it became the most diverse department gender-wise in the university and one of the most in the country. And there was no compromise in performance. The department ranking went up as the gender stuff came in. So I just wanted to say this in agreement with the notion that whoever is in charge makes a big difference. So when your department was a certain way, you decided to change it, and it made a difference, and you set the tone, and the same thing happened.
Thank you very much. Okay, I do appreciate those comments. I gave a talk last year at Yale, okay, and it was sponsored by computer science. 50% of the faculty at Yale in computer science are women. Now, there's no underrepresented minorities, but the women treated me well. They treated me really well. On the National Science Board, they were such strong leaders. Once I sat at a table like that, and there were 6 women on the National Science Board: Marcy Greenwood, Shirley Malcolm, all that, Rita Colwell, and there was one empty seat. Richard, join us for dinner. No way, no way. But I did. Anyway, no, you're an important group of people. Thank you for your comments. See, I say things that other people don't say, but they want to hear in some sense. So thank you all for your comments, and this is important. I do believe in deans. I think we need them.
Well, I think that's a great way to end. Thank you, Dr. Tapia.